I'm Chris Myers, Orlando Fly Casting Lesson, and the person who helped influence my cast the most was definitely Lefty Kreh. Now, I did not know him in person, but I got to see him at quite a few seminars back when I first started casting, most of which we don't have any longer today. We didn't have YouTube, we didn't have cell phones. You learned by reading a book, going to one of these seminars, or just trying to figure it out on your own. And definitely Lefty Kreh style had a huge influence on me. And today I'm going to go over his 5 principles of fly casting he talks about in his book, The Modern Fly Casting Method, which I have in my office. It definitely helped me become a better caster. If you haven't had a chance to see Lefty, you can find a few old clips of him on YouTube to watch. Definitely worth checking out. And I'm going to go over how I explain these 5 principles to my students. You will definitely find people who will argue with these principles, say that's really not true in the physics world, but it's more about helping you think about how the cast is made and how you can improve your cast by following these rules. Let's dive into it and start off with rule number 1. Lefty's principle number 1 was that the rod is a flexible lever that moves through varying size arc. And simply put, what he was saying is for a short cast, we only need a short stroke. For a long cast, we're going to make a longer stroke. So if I'm just making a very short 20-foot cast, I barely need to move anything except my hand. But if I'm going to start casting longer and longer lengths of line, I need to start moving that rod across a much longer straight line path. That is probably the easiest one to explain, the easiest one to follow. Short cast, short stroke, long cast, long stroke. There goes Joe Alligator cutting through the middle of my shot today. We're gonna have to pause for a brief second and let him cruise through so he isn't grabbing the end of my $100 fly line. We'll get back to the video in a second. Lefty's principle number 2 is we cannot begin the cast, or let's not even think about our cast starting until we are moving the end of the line. That means the more slack I have in here, I'm pulling. Now I started moving the end of the line. I'm already behind my head, so I've wasted over half of my stroke length just pulling that slack out of there, which means I'm going to have to punch the rod, give it a jolt of extra power, or keep on moving down into the ground or water behind me, which is going to cause a problem with the back cast. Then it's probably going to cause an issue with the next stroke, and so on, because it doesn't only apply to line laid out on the ground or water. It most certainly does. So we want to either strip it in and get our line straight, or you can use the roll cast to get your line out straight so that now you can begin your cast with a straight line. It also applies to line that is up in the air. If I'm making a cast and I have a big sag in my line, it might take me 3/4 or more of the stroke, depending on how much sag I have in there, to pull that sag out. And as long as I am pulling slack out of the line, it is not counting towards an efficient casting stroke. And we could get sag for a variety of ways. I could cast sag in there by stopping my tip down. I could make an awesome cast and just wait forever, and now I have sag, and there I didn't fully straighten the line out because some of my stroke was wasted pulling out the slack line. So if we are wasting stroke, then we are probably violating principle number 1. If I needed a long stroke for this longer piece of line, but because of the slack I pulled halfway, now I'm only using half a stroke. So this would be for a short piece of line, where this should be for a longer piece of line. If you're wasting stroke, you're violating principle number 1, which isn't going to give you an efficient cast. Principle number 3 is the line and the loop are only going to go in the direction you made your speed up and stop. We could go one direction for a very, very long way, and instead of the line going that way, you finish speeding up and stopping, going down, your line is going to go down. Same thing happens in the front. If I go out, down, I'm pulling that line down. So we need to finish in that straight line track Here's my little straight line track. It goes back and forth in this straight line. It can be a short straight line, it can be a long straight line depending on the length of line, but that cast is only going to go the direction we sped up and stop. So here's what that looks like. I come up, 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 out, 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 follow through. I'm stopping going up in the back, slightly down and out in the front, it goes out. But if I go this same one and I stop going down, stop going down, stop going down, stop going down, now I have lost my loop and I'm telling that line to go down into the ground or water behind me. So simply put, we are pulling fly line in a direction we want it to go, and it can only go where this tip pulls it. If I pull this around in a circle completely around me, I've encircled myself with this fly line because that is what I did with the tip. It will only go where the tip pulls it. So if we want it to go out that way, our tip must pull it out that way. It cannot pull it down into the ground and expect it to ever go out that way. And the instant this line passes my tip right now, that is the only way that line can go. As soon as I make my stop and it passes the tip, it's going that way no matter what else I do, unless I grab the line and yank on it and pull it back towards me. If I'm pausing at the end of that stroke, waiting for the line to unroll, that is the way it's going to unroll. And if I see it going down that way, that is because it passed my tip going down and it didn't pass it going out. Did you ever get to see Lefty Kreh in person and watch him cast at a fishing show? If so, let me know in the comments below where that was. And if you had a casting guru who really helped you, who was that you enjoyed reading and watching cast when you first started? This principle really helped me narrow up my loops, because it is more of a thought process, whether you are actually doing this in physics and the tip is doing what he says it is doing. I am not sure. There are probably some physicists that might argue with that, and some people who study casting and casting physics may say this is not true, but this principle really helped me tighten up my loops. And Lefty says that the size of the loop is determined by the distance you made your speed up and stop, as he calls it. And we all have been taught, and there's tons of research about how this stroke must constantly accelerate to a sudden and instant stop. And even Lefty would say that pull, 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 so it goes faster throughout the stroke and you come to an instant stop, the line passes the tip. But if we have a constant acceleration, then we can't have a speed up and stop at the end, because we really should have been making our speed up all the way through the stroke at a constant speed of acceleration. We don't want any sudden bursts of speed, because that is how we can overbend the rod and cause tailing loops and other issues. So I'm not sure that we are actually giving it a sudden burst of speed, but to me it feels like that, and here is how I'm doing that. I'm lifting up the line off the water, I'm clicking into my straight line track, which is up here somewhere. It's generally tilted slightly higher in the back and slightly lower in the front for accuracy, but it is a straight line. Across that straight line, I'm going to start at one angle, I'm going to finish at another angle. They're pointing two completely opposite directions. To me, I am trying to keep this pointing in the direction that it started for as long as possible. As I begin my acceleration, I'm pulling, pulling, pulling. There is no wrist engagement, no forearm change of angle until the end, boom, then I'm going to change that angle. Now it's in the air, it's straightening out. As soon as it does, I pull, I pull, I pull. There is no change in this angle, no change in this angle. In this angle down here, there's no change in where I'm pointing it until the end. So that is where I am making my accelerate and stop. And the more that I think about this is going now, pull, change, pull, change. So I feel myself making a little flip, a flick, a turnover, whatever you would like to describe it as, using my wrist and forearm to make a sudden acceleration to an instant stop and send that line on its way in a tight loop. Let's take a look at what these loops look like when we do that and what happens when we don't. If I make that sudden increase to a stop, I can get a nice narrow loop, no hauling whatsoever. If I take that same cast and I have just about one speed all the way through, whether it's slow, I'm going to get a floppy cast, which has sag in it because it's traveling so slow. If I go one speed fast all the way across, I can get the line straight, but then it's going to jump back on me, and now I have a huge hook in my line. So we don't want to be going one speed too slow, one speed too fast. Whatever speed we start off with, it has to increase, but the key is I want to save that angle change until the end. The final principle, number 5, Lefty talks about in his book, is something I've seen him leave out on seminars and not talk about on some of the YouTube videos, but it's something I use every single fly casting lesson when I'm talking about how to cast in the style that I prefer. And that his rule goes like this: it's two-part. For longer and more difficult casts, you must reach farther back behind your body. And in order to do that, there's something you must do with your hand so that you can reach back there. We all start with a thumb on top, just like this. If I just pick up, now I'm still looking at my thumbnail, still looking at my thumbnail, still looking at my thumbnail. This is as far as I can go. Here's how we get trapped into that little upright triangle where you can only cast this far, and now when you start trying to cast farther, you're doing it harder and you get tailing loops. If I want to reach back farther, as I'm making my lift, rotate your hand. These fingernails come from the side, the reel plate's on the side, rotate that up. He says 45, you find where it's comfortable for you, but what that allows me to do is rotate. Now I can go, 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 go. Coming from way back here. Look where the butt of this rod is. That's a huge difference than when it was up here. That butt of that rod has moved 3 feet. Now I'm making a much longer pull. A longer stroke precludes me from having to do a harder stroke. Harder in fly casting most of the time doesn't work. So every cast, as I'm picking this off the water, this is my initial lift. Make sure you got to rotate. He talks about being able to not look at your entire thumbnail the whole time. I like doing it this way, pull, 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 pull. Now, you could pull up and turn it this way and still get your hand back there. I find this way much more awkward for my style of casting. If you don't like turning your hand this way, you could lift it up and turn this way and now be looking at all thumbnail and no fingernails. Again, for me, I just don't like that. If it works for you, that is great. We don't all have to cast alike. That's principle number 5 from Lefty's book. So that covers all of them. Get the book, watch videos of Lefty Kreh, and if you're going to be in the Orlando area, you can come see me for a one-on-one casting tune-up, or even better, a inshore saltwater fly fishing trip all year round here in Central Florida.